I can still remember that morning clearly. I woke up feeling strange, almost lighter and heavier at the same time. I had been hoping for months, so I decided to test. When the result appeared, I burst into tears, happy tears, the kind that roll down your cheeks before you even realize you're crying. My husband hugged me tight, his face lighting up in a way I had never seen before. We whispered to each other, we're going to be parents. From that moment, my life changed. Every decision I made was with my baby in mind. I changed my diet, gave up coffee, forced myself to walk daily, and downloaded every pregnancy app I could find. I tracked the baby's development week by week, reading about the size comparisons, a blueberry this week, a lime the next. Every milestone filled me with joy. But alongside the joy, there was fear. I knew pregnancy could be risky, and I wanted to do everything right. That's why I chose a gynecologist I thought I could trust. She was highly recommended, with good reviews and years of experience. When I met her the first time, she was calm, confident, and reassuring. She told me not to worry, that everything looked perfect. At each appointment, I asked questions. Is the baby growing well? Is the heartbeat strong? Do I need extra tests? She always gave me short answers, sometimes smiling, sometimes brushing me off. But I convinced myself she was just busy. Doctors have many patients, I thought, and if something were wrong, she would tell me. That trust became my biggest mistake. The months went by, and I began preparing for my baby's arrival. I painted the nursery soft yellow, bought a crib, folded tiny clothes that smelled of fresh laundry, and sat in the rocking chair imagining singing lullabies. I kept telling myself, this will be the happiest day of my life. As my due date approached, I grew more nervous. I asked my doctor what labor might be like, what warning signs to look for. She brushed it off with a laugh and said, you'll be fine, women do this every day. At the time, I believed her. I didn't know that her dismissive attitude was a red flag. When contractions started, it felt like a wave of pain rolling through me, but also a surge of excitement. I was about to meet my baby. My husband grabbed the hospital bag we had packed weeks earlier, and we rushed to the hospital. My heart was racing, my hands trembling, but inside I felt ready. I thought I was safe. I thought I was in good hands. I thought nothing could go wrong. But I was wrong. So very wrong. That day, the dream I had cherished my whole life turned into the greatest nightmare I could ever imagine. By the third hour, I couldn't pretend anymore. The pain had become unbearable. My breaths were shallow, my back soaked in sweat. Yes, I whispered. It's time. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Every bump in the road sent pain shooting through me, and I clutched the seatbelt while my husband kept saying, hang on, we're almost there. When we pulled up to the hospital entrance, nurses rushed me into a wheelchair and wheeled me through the bright, sterile hallways. My heart pounded, not just from the contractions, but from the anticipation. I remember thinking, this is it. In a few hours, I'll finally meet my baby. When we reached the labor and delivery ward, they admitted me quickly. The nurses hooked me up to monitors, strapped a belt around my belly to track the baby's heartbeat, and checked my vitals. I watched the lines spike on the screen, listened to the steady whoosh of my baby's heart. It was the most beautiful sound in the world. But then, little by little, I noticed changes. The monitor occasionally beeped in warning, showing dips in the heartbeat. My husband noticed too. He asked one of the nurses, is everything okay? She hesitated before answering, it's normal, don't worry. But her eyes told a different story. They looked unsettled, concerned. When my gynecologist finally walked in, she looked rushed, almost irritated. She barely greeted me before glancing at the monitor. Everything looks fine, she said flatly. I asked, why does the baby's heartbeat keep dipping? She shrugged. That happens sometimes. It's nothing to worry about. Her words should have comforted me, but they didn't. My instincts told me something wasn't right. I wanted to push harder for answers, but between the contractions and the fear, I let her words silence me. After all, she was the doctor. She was supposed to know better than me. Hours passed. The contractions grew stronger, longer, crueler. I screamed into the pillow, clutched my husband's hand until my knuckles turned white. Through the haze of pain, I kept asking about the baby. Each time, the doctor brushed me off. The baby is fine. Focus on breathing. At one point, I heard the monitor beep again. Longer this time. I saw the nurse's eyes widen. She whispered something to the doctor, who waved her off like an annoying fly. Don't scare the patient, she muttered. That moment still haunts me, because what they were seeing wasn't normal. My baby was in distress. The warning signs were flashing right in front of them, and yet my doctor chose to ignore them. The hours dragged on. My body was exhausted, trembling from the effort. I felt like I had been in that room for days. At one point, I begged for help. Please, something's wrong, I can feel it, I cried. My gynecologist sighed and said, Emily, you're panicking, just relax. But how could I relax? Every instinct in my body screamed that my child was fighting for life. Then it happened. The monitor gave off a loud, continuous alarm. The room filled with a sharp beeping sound, and I saw nurses rush in. One of them tried to reposition me, another fiddled with the monitor. My gynecologist finally looked concerned, but still, she didn't act fast. No emergency call, no urgent decision, just hesitation. Minutes mattered, but she wasted them. I felt my body pushing on its own, but something wasn't right. The pressure was unbearable, the silence in the room deafening. I heard whispers between the nurses, felt the fear in their voices. I asked again, "Is my baby okay?" Silence. That silence was the first time I realized that everything was slipping away. The excitement I had carried for 9 months was being replaced by terror. Something terrible was happening, and the people who were supposed to protect me and my child were failing us. I didn't know it then, but those moments of negligence would cost me everything. I screamed with another contraction, the kind that ripped through every bone in my body. I could feel my baby struggling as if he was fighting for life inside me. My instincts screamed louder than the machines. "He's in danger. Do something." But my gynecologist didn't act. She didn't call for an emergency C-section. She didn't order immediate intervention. She just kept saying, "Push, Emily, push." I obeyed, even though something inside me felt horribly wrong. I pushed with everything I had, my heart, my soul, my entire being. And then finally I felt the release as my baby entered the world. But there was no cry. The silence was deafening. I had imagined that first wail 1,000 times, the sound that would make me a mother. Instead, all I heard was the shuffling of feet, the whispers of panic, the hurried rustle of gloves. I tried to lift my head, but I was too weak. "Why isn't he crying?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What's happening?" No one answered. Finally, I caught a glimpse. My baby's tiny body was limp, his skin pale. Nurses rushed him to a nearby table, their hands moving frantically. One of them tried suction, another tried to stimulate him. I heard someone say he swallowed water. My heart stopped. Water? How does a baby swallow water during birth? I had never even heard of that happening. My mind raced. I wanted to jump off the bed, grab my child, hold him, breathe life into him myself. But I was frozen, trapped by exhaustion and fear. Minutes dragged on like hours. I kept asking, "Is he okay? Please tell me he's okay." My husband begged too, tears running down his face. But the doctor avoided my eyes. Finally, she muttered the words that shattered my world. "I'm sorry, we couldn't save him." The room spun. My ears rang. My chest collapsed in on itself. I screamed, but the sound that came out of me was something animal, something raw and broken. It didn't sound like me. It sounded like a soul being ripped in half. They handed me my baby, wrapped in a blanket. He was so small, so delicate, his face perfectly formed, his tiny hands curled as if he was just sleeping. But he wasn't sleeping. His chest never rose. His lips never parted to cry. I held him against my chest, rocking him, whispering, "Wake up, please, mommy's here, wake up." But he stayed still. That was the moment my dream of motherhood died. What made it worse was the way the gynecologist handled it. Instead of compassion, she gave excuses. "These things happen," she said coldly. "It's no one's fault." But I knew it was someone's fault. Babies don't just drown during birth. My baby had shown signs of distress for hours. The machines had screamed warnings. My body had told me something was wrong, but she ignored it all. Her negligence killed my child. I stayed in that hospital room clutching my lifeless baby for what felt like forever. My husband sat beside me, broken, unable to speak. We just stared at the tiny face we would never see smile, the little body that would never take its first step. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the monitors beeping, the nurses whispering, the silence when my baby should have cried. I kept replaying the doctor's dismissive tone, the way she lied to me, telling me everything was fine. It wasn't fine, and now nothing would ever be fine again. When the nurses finally took him away, I felt like my heart had been ripped from my chest. My arms ached with emptiness, as if they knew they were supposed to be holding life, not loss. That was the night my life changed forever. They kept me admitted for a full week. At first I thought it was because they cared about my recovery. I was weak, physically and emotionally, and part of me hoped they were keeping me under close observation out of compassion. But very quickly I realized it was something else. It wasn't compassion, it was control. The nurses tiptoed around me, avoiding eye contact, speaking in hushed tones. Whenever I asked questions, "What happened? How did he swallow water? Could this have been prevented?" I was given vague answers or silence. My gynecologist visited once, on the second day. She walked in with a clipboard, her tone brisk and businesslike, as if I were just another case to be checked off. I asked her directly, "Why didn't you act sooner? The monitor kept warning us. You told me everything was fine when it wasn't." She didn't flinch. Instead, she sighed and said, "Emily, sometimes these things just happen. Babies aspirate fluid, and there's nothing we can do." Her words felt like another stab to my heart. She was lying and I knew it. My instincts, my mother's intuition, even without medical training, I knew the truth. She ignored the warning signs. She neglected my baby. She failed me. But instead of admitting fault, she wrapped her failure in medical jargon and dismissiveness. The way she looked at me, as if my questions were an inconvenience, made me feel smaller than ever. Each day I spent in that hospital, I grew more restless. I wanted to go home, to escape the suffocating silence of those rooms. But the staff insisted I needed to stay. They ran routine tests, gave me medications I didn't fully understand, and reassured me I was being cared for. On the 6th day, a nurse I hadn't seen before came to my room. She looked at me with genuine sadness in her eyes, something I hadn't felt from anyone else there. As she adjusted my IV, she leaned closer and whispered, "I'm so sorry, Emily. I can't say much, but you should know, your baby's distress was clear. You should have been taken for an emergency delivery hours earlier." Her words confirmed what I had suspected all along. My gynecologist had ignored the signs. My baby could have been saved. Instead, negligence stole his life. By the end of the week, they finally discharged me. My body felt weak, my spirit even weaker. When they handed me the discharge papers, I flipped through them mechanically until I saw the number at the bottom. $5,000. $5,000. They were charging me for the week I spent grieving in their cold, sterile rooms. They were charging me for the medications, the bed, the meals I couldn't even eat. But most painfully, they were charging me for the care that had failed me in the first place. It felt like a cruel joke. Not only had I lost my baby, but now I was being handed a bill large enough to drown us financially. My husband's face went red with anger when he saw it. He argued with the billing office, demanding they reduce it, given what had happened. But all they offered was a stiff bureaucratic response. These are standard charges. Standard charges for losing a child. Walking out of that hospital was one of the hardest things I've ever done. My body was lighter without the pregnancy, but my arms were empty. I carried no baby, no car seat, no joy, just a broken spirit and a stack of bills. As we drove home, I stared out the window in silence. The world outside looked the same. Cars moved, people walked, life went on. But inside me, everything had changed. I wasn't the same Emily who had walked into that hospital a week earlier full of hope. I was someone else now, someone who had tasted a grief deeper than words could ever describe. And worst of all, I knew this wasn't fate. It wasn't just bad luck. My baby didn't die because nature was cruel. He died because a doctor ignored the signs, lied to me, and put her own convenience above my child's life. That truth burned inside me, and it still does to this day. The nursery, once filled with hope, was now a place of haunting silence. The crib stood untouched, the baby clothes folded neatly in drawers, the rocking chair waiting for lullabies that would never be sung. I couldn't walk past the room without breaking down. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of that day in the hospital. My mind was a loop of alarms, whispers, and silence where my baby's cry should have been. But what tormented me most wasn't just grief, it was doubt. I kept asking myself, was it my fault? Did I do something wrong? Could I have prevented this? Those questions consumed me until one day a voice cut through the fog. My husband looked at me, his eyes red but steady, and said, "Emily, this wasn't your fault. You did everything right. They failed us." His words hit me like lightning. He was right. I had trusted my gynecologist, trusted her expertise, trusted that she would protect me and my child, but she hadn't. Instead, she had ignored the signs of distress, and deep down, I knew it. I couldn't rest until I found the truth. The first step was requesting my medical records. At first, the hospital resisted. They stalled, asked for paperwork, told me it would take time. But I persisted. After weeks of pressure, I finally received a thick file of documents, filled with medical terms I barely understood. I sat at the kitchen table night after night, highlighting words, searching for meaning. My husband helped, scrolling through medical articles on his laptop, trying to piece together the puzzle. That's when we found it. In the notes, there were repeated mentions of fetal distress. The monitors had clearly shown abnormal heart rate patterns for hours before my delivery. The record stated late decelerations, a red flag that usually demands immediate action. Yet in the notes, my doctor had written "mother reassured, no intervention necessary." No intervention necessary. Those 3 words burned into my mind. My baby's distress had been visible, documented, undeniable, and she had chosen to do nothing. I needed more answers, so I reached out to one of the nurses who had cared for me. At first, she was hesitant to speak. She said she could lose her job if she revealed too much. But when I broke down crying on the phone, she softened. "I shouldn't say this, Emily," she whispered, "but your baby could have been saved. We saw the distress. We urged her to act. But she brushed us off. She didn't want to call for surgery. She said it would pass." My hands shook as I held the phone. So, if she had acted sooner, Yes, the nurse interrupted gently. If she had done an emergency C-section, your baby would likely be alive today. I collapsed into tears. Hearing those words confirmed everything I had feared. My baby hadn't died because of chance. He had died because someone decided not to act. In the days that followed, I tried to speak with the gynecologist again. I wanted her to admit what she had done, to acknowledge her negligence. But every attempt was blocked. Her office told me she was unavailable or that she had no further comment. It felt like I was screaming into a void. The hospital sent me a formal letter of condolence. Cold, impersonal words typed on official letterhead. We regret your loss, it said, but nowhere did it admit responsibility. It was as if my baby's death was just a statistic to them, a line in a report. I considered filing a complaint, even a lawsuit. But every lawyer I spoke with warned me it would be a long, painful process with no guarantee of success. They told me hospitals have powerful lawyers, endless resources, and ways of covering themselves. Still, I couldn't let it go. I didn't want money. I wanted accountability. I wanted to make sure no other mother went through what I had. But as I searched for truth, I realized something painful. The system was not built to protect patients like me. It was built to protect the doctors, the hospitals, and their reputations. The only thing I had left was my voice. And so I began writing my story. I poured every detail onto paper, the joy of my pregnancy, the warning signs ignored, the lies I was told, the silence that haunts me still. I wrote not just for myself, but for every mother who has been silenced, dismissed, or ignored. Because the truth matters. My baby's life mattered. And even if the hospital never admits it, I will never stop speaking it. At home, the silence was unbearable. The house felt hollow, too still, too clean. For 9 months, I had prepared for the sounds of a newborn, the soft cries at night, the coos, the hiccups, even the fussing. Instead, there was nothing, just silence. The nursery was the sharpest wound. Each time I passed the door, my heart tightened. The crib stood untouched, the sheets smooth and waiting. Tiny clothes, still neatly folded, carried the faint scent of detergent. Stuffed animals smiled from the shelf, waiting for a baby who would never arrive. I couldn't pack anything away. To close that door would have felt like admitting the truth, that his life had ended before it began. I spent hours in the rocking chair, clutching the blanket meant to wrap him. I rocked back and forth, whispering lullabies into empty air, my tears soaking the fabric. My arms ached with a physical longing, as if my body remembered it was supposed to hold a child but had been robbed of the chance. The guilt consumed me. Deep down, I knew it was the doctor's negligence, but the questions tortured me. What if I had spoken louder? What if I had demanded a C-section? What if I had trusted my instincts instead of her reassurances? I replayed every moment, searching for something I could have done differently, always ending in blame. I was his mother, wasn't it my job to protect him? And yet I couldn't save him. Nights were the worst. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the house. When sleep finally came, I dreamed of him. Alive, smiling, reaching for me. Waking up was like losing him all over again. Even my own body betrayed me. My milk came in, though there was no baby to feed. My body was ready to nurture, but the child it had prepared for was gone. The physical ache was nothing compared to the anguish of knowing why.